Welcome to Slayerfest 98. I'm your host, Ian Carlos Crawford.
And I'm Kimberly Ann Southwick. Today, we have as our guests film critic, journalist, and broadcaster
Leila Latiff,
as well as journalist and critic
Gita Jackson.
Hi, everyone.
Awesome.
I'm so happy to have you all here. So we are here to talk about the 25th anniversary of What's My Line, which the 25th anniversary happened a month and a half ago, but we're doing it late. I was like planning it and I was like, oh shit, I can't do it now. And then I was like, wait, I do the podcast. I can make my own rules. It doesn't matter if it's late. I can put it out late. Who cares? So yeah, we're here to talk about What's My Line, parts 1 and 2.
Just like Buffy, Ian, she makes her own rules.
Right?
She doesn't need a guidebook.
I really was like, I don't know why I keep myself. I was like, oh, now I can't do it. And then I was talking to like the Slayerfest 98 editor, Ashley. Hi, Ashley. You're editing this. I was like, she was like, yeah, it doesn't matter when you do it. And I was like, oh, right. It doesn't, right? Like people will still listen. Doesn't matter. But so yeah, this episode turned 25. And before we do, I would like to get everyone's Buffy origin. Leila, would you like to go first?
Oh, yeah, sure. So I came to Buffy, I grew up in Sudan, and then I moved to the UK, and I kind of went from being in like literally like a school without toilets, with like literally a hole in the ground, like proper like Wild West side, to being quite a fancy boarding school. But I found it very overwhelming spending all of that time with all of these people. So my big thing that I would do would go and stay in my brother's apartment on the weekends, and have what I would say 36 hours of silence, where I would do nothing but watch Buffy box sets. And there was a weird thing in the UK where the box sets would come out 6 months to a year before it actually showed on TV. So that was the first way that you could see it. And I guess it's kind of like the early binge watching in a way. So yeah, as a result, by the time, I know a lot of us have been like, oh, we've watched every episode 5 times. But by the time the season had ended, I was already at 5 times, because this was like literally like a spiritual practice for me. So yeah, it's my favorite TV show, and nothing has since come close in any sense, really.
Yeah, I constantly say this on the podcast, but I really do feel like Buffy spoiled me, like spoiled other shows for me, because I always want the like experience of, oh, it can make me cry, but it also can make me laugh. Also, there's fun action. Also, I like all the characters. Like, that's what I always want in like especially my genre shows, and that's, not always what we get.
Yeah, no, definitely. In my capacity as a TV critic, just today I've been given Sarah Michelle Gellar's new TV show, The Wolf Pack, to review. And I actually had to wait until we recorded this podcast because I needed the purity of my Buffy experience before I could accept her in a new role. I didn't want to taste it for you guys.
I kind of love that.
Adorable.
I am excited for that show. I feel like with this, like Wolfpack, it's like we're inching closer to a possible, but it just feels like everything is getting a revival except for Buffy. And I know it's probably because of, he who shall not be named who created it. And I had the woman, so I can say this because I had her on. She said it on the podcast. Monica Usu Breen, who was going to be the showrunner, she came on for one of our season 7 episodes and talked about that she just hasn't heard from them since they announced it. Like, then Disney bought Fox.
Wow.
And she's like, I would still do it if they came to me, but no, she said she thinks of it as like, you had one good date and then nothing really came of it. But if that person texts you again a few months later and was like, you want to grab drinks? She would be like, yeah, sure. It was a good date. So yeah, but I feel like with her coming back to genre, and like, I just feel like if they could make her like an executive producer or something, I don't know. Did any of you read the New York Times interview with the like profile of her?
No.
Of course.
And when Do Revenge came out, it's really good. And she talks about Joss without talking about Joss, which is 1, very smart, and 2, I just love that. Like, fuck you, I don't even need to say your name. Because she says that she wanted to be like one of the behind the scenes producers because she wanted to make sure these young actors had a like safe environment and like they had someone that they could talk to if something wasn't going right. And like, I don't know, there's something about like her like claiming that power, which is clearly like, I worked on a show for a long time that had a very toxic behind the scenes environment and like a shitty boss, but she didn't even need to say that. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know. I think that's so fucking cool and like so admirable that she's like, no, I want to make sure no one has a shitty experience I had.
Yeah.
Because, right, like sometimes you see people who are like, well, I did it. You should be able to do it too. And she's like, I did it and I don't want people to go through that. And it's nice when like the person who was your like favorite character on your favorite show is also like pretty cool later on.
That is always nice. Yeah. Not a guarantee.
Right. Yes. Gita, what's your Buffy origin?
So I ended up in high school. I guess that's actually where it starts. My mom's family friend, my mom teaches at Wesleyan, where Joss went. And then she has we have a family friends that taught Joss. And they encouraged me when I was young to watch Buffy. I mean, we finally did when I was in high school after I think they gave me a Buffy comic. They gave me the Buffy comic where it's a Buffy in the far future. Not Buffy literally, but the Slayer in the far future. And she doesn't have a watcher. Yes.
Yes, I love that comic. It's so good, right?
It's fantastic. It stuck with me this entire time. And so eventually, after that, I ended up watching, and I watched it all with my mom, which is pretty intense additionally. It's already a very intense show, but I remember as watching the body, of course, like in rapt silence, just on a weekend. And it was like, 11 o'clock, way later than we normally stay up. And then we just both watched to the end of the season just in silence. We're like in the era of changing DVDs. So I was like, getting up and just quickly put the next DVD in, and my mom had no argument, which just a wild, wild time. So it's really, it was very deeply a part of my identity for a long time. And then also throughout college, I went to Oberlin, and they have this thing where students can teach classes, and it's called experimental college. You can teach classes for credit. And I took a Buffy exco, and then I ended up teaching it as well. So I ended up just sort of getting so thoroughly involved in this cultural object that I went all the way through worshipfully loving it to sort of hating it to appreciating it. And now I'm just at the point where I feel like there's a lot of good and a lot of bad in Buffy, and the key to really unlocking what makes it good or bad is actually just by paying the most disrespect possible to Joss Whedon. Because for most of the time that the show's existed, he has perpetuated the myth that he is responsible for everything that makes a show good. When actually, when I watch it now, and I'm sure we'll talk about this in the episode, what strikes me so much is that the cast chemistry is unbelievable, and he pegs a lot of really young stars who would go on to be in much, much more famous properties without him, after they leave him behind. Especially in this episode, Seth Green, which is just like, I looked at his IMDb about what he was doing at the same time and what he was about to do. And it's just kind of wild that he was also on this reheating, WB show.
Right? Yeah, because he already had a lot of working acting credits, right? It's so weird.
Yeah.
I have to say, Gita, that I did have, I do remember years ago, reading as many interviews as I did at the time, hearing Alison Hannigan saying that she felt that the feud between Joss and Sarah Michelle Gellar was basically down to the fact that neither one felt that the other one was being grateful enough. But I feel like the idea of a male, powerful showrunner being like, this young teenager is not grateful enough to me is so gross.
It's so disgusting.
It's so disgusting. But I would also add, if you want to kind of make me feel like a million years old, my box sets were on VHS. That is
oh my God. Wow. That must have been a massive collection too.
It was. It took up a lot of room.
My friends, who was a little bit older than me, went to college in a slightly different era. She always tells me about when she realized that her one friend was really rich because she had all of these pirated Sailor Moon VHSs in a big Tupperware container underneath her bed in her dorm room.
Right? Those were expensive. I had 2 that I had to save up to buy.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, because they're not at the con, then you can't get them,
True. Yeah, I never went to the con.
The comic shop we worked at used to sell them, remember?
Yep. But the good ones were at Suncoast. They didn't have that many actual VHS. They had merch, Sailor Moon merch, but not too many actual VHSs or DVDs. I think by the time we worked there, DVDs were
I actually still, they're the only VHS tapes I still have in my possession are my Buffy VHS tapes. I have the so over here, I don't know if they released this in the UK like this. I feel like I've talked about this with other people, so I probably knew this fact at which it was or whatever. But the VHSs, the way they released them here is that it would be like 3 VHS tapes, and each of them just had like 3 episodes on them. So it'd be like 3 standout episodes from season 2, 3 standout episodes from season 3, and I think they only released them for like 1, 2, and 3. And I literally have like my Buffy figures like I have them as little standees for my Buffy figures.
Oh, no, it was a little bit different here. It was that you would get first half of the season 1 box set, second half of the season 1 box set in VHSs, but they were expensive. They were like $40, $50. But if you were like me and that was your entire weekend's plan for 3 months, it actually worked out pretty cost efficient.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. That's a party in a box right there.
You think about what we pay for streaming services. Like if you add them all up these days,
Don't even get me started on that, man. We reinvented the cable package. It makes me infuriated every time I think about it.
It really, that really is just what it is, right? We reinventing cable. Like there's no other way to put that, and it's just like, oh god, this is so annoying.
It makes me want to lie down whenever I soberingly, it's like, okay, so the nature of capital is to always consolidate in this particular way, huh? And I could just see it happen throughout my entire lifetime, huh? That's crazy.
100%. I was watching this on Amazon Prime earlier when I was taking my notes and kind of rewatching it, and I just thought, how many times have I paid for this?
God, that's the goal. You don't own anything anymore. You're just leasing it temporarily. This is a different podcast anyway.
My podcast co-host, Zach, that I do My Bloody Judy with, who sometimes does Slayerfest as well, since we've been friends, he's been very big on physical media, and now he's like, see, this is why I was big on physical media, because it could come off streaming. And I'm like, damn it, you're kind of right. Like, maybe I do want to start, movies I really love or a show I really love, maybe I will buy box sets, just because, shit's just disappearing from streaming, and then that's it, right?
Okay, so I have a DVD VHS player, Ian. So if you ever need to watch something and you don't have the capability, I do. You can just come visit me in Alabama, right? And we can watch your Buffy VHSs together.
I did write an article about this about 6 months ago for a magazine called Total Film that was all about kind of disappearing movies. And one of the most depressing fact that I learned when I was doing research for this was basically when Netflix was a service where it mailed you DVDs, they had about 100,000 different movies and different properties of movies and TV shows in their catalog, and now it's about 6,000.
Wow!
So people think they have more access than ever. They actually have way less.
Oh God!
Sorry to start this on a bummer.
No. That's just not surprising, but also ugh.
Yeah.
But okay, so we're here to talk about What's My Line, parts 1 and 2. We get to meet Kendra, and watching these episodes, I really found myself being like, man, I really do wish we got more of her. It's almost like she's the Buffy and Buffy's the Faith in this dynamic, and I kind of like that.
Yeah, I was struck by a lot of the character status quos in this episode are ones that are really, really fun.
Yeah.
And ones that I feel like they move on from really quickly that I wish that they would have stayed, there's a real sweet spot with all of these character interactions here, right? And especially, I did think to myself with Kendra that I do really like her character, and I really like Bianca Lawson here. She's really charming. The accent grows on you and feels less... It feels less startlingly unrealistic the more you sort of have heard it before. And also, I mean, she's from a basically made-up place, right?
Right.
I was trying to figure out where it was implied that she's from, because, Jamaica and the Caribbean places, those are normal places where people have parents and shirts and go to school. It's anyway. But I just genuinely... I like it because it sort of calls bullshit on a lot of Buffy's insecurities at this point in time in her life in a way that is not possible for all the other characters, because demonstrably compared to all the other characters, she does have the worst life. Basically, she's out there committing murder every single night. It's pretty rough. But here she sees, oh, actually, it allows her to appreciate the people that are around her in a way that doesn't really get through to her later on when people try to convince her of the same thing.
Yeah, I'm glad that you mentioned the accent, because I really was like watching it and I'm like, I mean, it's very fucking memorable and like it is cartoony, but it really, I don't know, watching it now, it's just like, yeah, that's what she sounds like. I don't know. It's not like, didn't feel jarring.
Kendra, the Vampire Slayer. Like, that's what she sounds like, okay? It's not real. She's not from a real place. She's like, I'd rather it be made up than a representation of a place that's real.
I like this. I like this. I'm into this.
Yeah.
It's like Benoit Blanc, you know?
Yeah.
That's not an accent from a real place. That's fake.
Right.
You know?
And anytime someone's like, oh, that accent, it's like, it's on purpose, duh. Like, fucking duh. Like,
yeah. You know?
Yeah, and like, I do like her chemistry with Buffy. I don't know. I found myself more charmed than I would have said before rewatching it, because I haven't rewatched this in a while. But yeah, I was like, yeah, I like her. I almost would have liked to see her and Faith, like how they would have interacted, right?
Yeah,
they're so
womp.
different. Yeah.
Yeah.
But okay, so this episode, we're already mid-season 2. Buffy and Angel, I forgot how little they are like officially together before he turns evil. Like, there's still a little bit on their back and forth bullshit in this, where like she's kind of aggressive with him when she sees him, but then they're kissing. And we open on, they're talking about this job fair thing. Kim, I feel like you did this at your school, didn't you?
No, we didn't do this, but like
we didn't do this at mine.
This was something that schools did, though.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, certainly.
Fascinating. Sorry, it's just being at school in England. This just seemed like one of the things like homecoming. That this was a staple of the American high school experience. This is really quite a revelation to hear that I was lied to.
No, I mean, I'm sure people did it though. Like, I feel like it happens a lot. It happens enough in media that like it's not like one person made it up. You know what I mean? But
absolutely,
we didn't do it.
You know, it's funny. I was thinking about the origin of this here because Joss didn't go. I mean, Marty Noxon and someone else, I forgot the other writer, wrote this episode. But like, Joss didn't go to school, public high school in America. He went to school in England. So what does he know?
That's what my brother went to.
That's so funny. Oh my God.
And they're so proud of that fact. But at least they were when he was there 10 years ago. Maybe it's gone a bit quiet.
Understandable. Exactly.
Yes.
Yeah. You know, it's wild, you know. So I feel like it must have been something that happened to the generation of people that wrote this episode, right? Because I don't remember it happening in my public high school. I feel like if you ask my parents, they would say that it happened to them, though. They're super old.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'm looking up, Marty Noxon wrote both these episodes, so.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but I am wondering, like, in theory, though, if this did happen to you, like, what a fucked up thing to happen to you. Like, could you imagine taking career advice from your 16-year-old self?
Oh, my God.
I'd be dead.
Yeah. Yes. Your advice would be to commit myself to an inpatient mental health care facility immediately, you know?
God, Kim, I'm trying to think of what 16-year-old me and you would have wanted us to do.
Who knows? I mean, I had no idea. I was like, I'm a writer.
Yeah,
I mean, I still am, but like that's different.
Yeah, but not with that pronunciation, maybe.
Exactly. You got me.
But so yeah, I do love this back and forth here. I like when like, you're not going to be young forever, and Xander's like, yes, but I'll always be stupid, and then he's like, don't all rush to disagree, and Buffy's phoning in her, you're not stupid, great. Like,
yeah.
I do miss their banter. He's haven't,
the worst, though. By the way,
my God, I love in this episode repeatedly. He's really quippy in this one for some reason, and in this episode especially, it happens throughout basically up and through season 7. But here you get to see Giles just repeatedly ignore him when he says things, like not address him at all, and it's so funny.
It's funnier than what he's saying.
Yeah, that's true. It really is. He's really reaching for a lot of these. And I mean, it's the only reason I think Xander Harris does not come off as a little worm man immediately is that the actor who plays him is just so charming. And in these early seasons, just is, you know, he gets a little puffy later on, but here he's looking pretty nice. And it's just really evident here because it's the only way. Later stuff in the episode also makes sense to me at all. But I really do. There is like a magic to the high school stuff that once you leave high school, even though they hit some really high highs later in the show, it just feels like this episode to me really does represent like a real sweet spot with the whole series, where this is like the pinnacle of the high school stuff, where they take a really good, you know, they're talking about the thing that they're going to be talking about for the rest of the 2 episodes right now, right? Which is like Buffy's desire to have a normal life and her feeling like she never will be able to. And they use that and they set it up really quickly in a bunch of really actually pretty fun to watch dialogue with, you know, 3 actors that have a lot of chemistry between them.
Yeah.
But it's so funny watching it now, going back. I mean, I don't think it's what I took from it watching it as a teenager, because I feel like I've had to unlearn a lot of the bullshit that kind of Xander told me as the way a nice guy treats you. But like, it's so clear to me now that Cordelia's the hero. Like, even just in those like little back and forths with Xander, where I think they're going for us kind of Katharine Hepburn, Spencer Tracy, or like a Han Solo Leia. But he goes below the belt. He's like pretty much just calling her a whore.
Yeah.
And
like straight up.
And she's actually the only person that's in there for selfless reasons. It's not, you know, she's actually there because, you know, there is no social pressure. She's not trying to impress anyone.
Oh, yeah.
Versus anybody else. And actually, if you listen to what she says, she doesn't say the level of shitty stuff that Xander says.
No, she stops herself from saying things that are mean on a couple occasions. She walks away laughing when she gets his test results back, but he doesn't actually say anything mean to him. And he is constantly calling her stupid and a whore, and that he hopes that she will die. You know?
Yeah, right.
It's pretty intense.
You know what always stands out? What I always think of with their relationship, Kim, it's actually something you said when we were covering season 2, when you were on for it. In Bad Eggs, I remember you being so mad, and this always stands out to me because you were correct, that when Cordelia's like possessed by the like whatever demon, and she's attacking Xander, and he's like, this is going to feel good, and he knocks her out. And like, why would you say that? Like, what do you mean this is going to feel good, you asshole? Like, and I remember you like spending time talking about that, and that's what I always think of when I'm like, it's just sometimes I'm like, oh, well, early Xander isn't that bad. And I'm like, well, he did say that in Bad Eggs. It would feel good to fucking punch his girlfriend? Like, what?
Right? Yeah. Bad Eggs and Ted were the first 2 episodes I was ever on for Slayerfest, by the way, the ones that come after this one. We did them together in one episode.
That was when I was recording out of my living room in Brooklyn.
And we were all together in the same room.
Yeah.
Well, now you're cross continents. I'm in Africa, so you're going
amazing. Come so far.
But yeah, so we get the moving plot of like the action stuff is Drusilla's reading tarot cards. Spike is talking to, I don't think I realized what his name was before, but Dalton, because he's the guy that later the judge like senses some humanity in him and kills him, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. They're like dissect. I feel like, I know people love, and I do love season 2, but season 2 still has a lot of this where it's like, there's a thing we gotta do and blah, 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 but it's like just plot device. Like we don't need to like, like it's like, oh, they're like trying to figure out something in a book. Okay. And then it's like, that leads them to a spell, to a key, which is a cross. And all right, sure. Yeah. Like whatever. It's kind of like in Star Trek when they're like, oh, warp speed. Oh no, the dilithium crystals are out. And it's like, well, that doesn't really mean anything, but sure.
Yeah, but at the same time, like getting to watch the characters interact, even with someone like Dalton, or I've written in my notes, nerd vamp, you know, they're just also enjoyable to watch, that even if the actual like little plot, this to this map scavenger hunt that they have us follow is sort of all meaningless in the end, because we know they're going to get all the ingredients to the potion and do the thing, like it's still cool, I guess, or like enjoyable. And I feel like I learned something about the characters as I'm watching them do all that. Which, like, the thing I learned in the scene with the tarot cards and everything is, man, like, Spike's, he sucks. He's, like, emotionally abusing Drusilla and then, like, you know, being like, oh, pedo, I'm so sorry. Like, afterwards, he just, like, he gets so much better. He grows so much as a character from, like, this character that we see him here. He learned so much over, like, you know, by the time we get to season 7. And I think going back and looking at early Spike in that way, like as this emotionally abusive partner who, you know, is helping her, but also like taking a lot of his own anger out on her. It's really that back and forth is like really not fair to her, even if she is not all in her mind.
Well, and also that's a different Drusilla and Spike dynamic than we get later on in the show.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I feel like he was more the one, like she was more the like in control one, like moving forward. She was the more like confident, dominant, like personality in their relationship. And he was kind of the one doing things for her. Like later on, like hearing him yell at her almost felt jarring because it feels like even later on in season 2, he would never yell at Drusilla. Like she would be the one that's like floating around saying sing-songy things. And he would be like, oh, my pet, I love you so much. What do you need me to do? So even this, it's like you can tell this is early on in writing those characters because, right, I don't think he would have yelled at Drusilla. Like later on in the show, there would never be a scene. Like Drusilla feels like the one person he wouldn't yell at.
The very end of part 2, though, of these 2 episodes, though, we do get that like role reversal.
Yeah.
So, I mean, knowing that that's how these 2 end, it makes sense.
Right.
But to me, it just genuinely feels like a very scattershot episode in terms of like canon, like in terms of what we establish in terms of, you know, I mean, number one, who Willie is, in terms of can vampires get sick and how do you heal them? And how long does it take them to get well of their own accord? And
also, like, how strong are vampires and can they break a flimsy lock?
Yes.
But I mean, my number one thing, which is probably like my number one question of the entire series, is why is the Watchers Council? And like, never has it been more puzzling.
That's so true.
And it's like we tried, we couldn't figure it out. Let's just leave this alone. Maybe in 4 seasons we'll figure out a purpose because this is.
They're a bunch of guys. They're somewhere. Don't worry about it. There's a handbook. Yeah, it's fine.
Buffy doesn't need it. It's not going to work with her.
Basically, they used to write television in a very, very different way. And I've been thinking about this a lot, where you can really trace a line through television history of, you know, prior to this, you know, the era of trying to get things into syndication. So you're really just trying to create status quos and that allow for as many funny situations as you can possibly have in a television show. But here, and also like Star Trek Deep Space Nine, you can see, you know, certain teams of writers start to see ways they can carry storylines through multiple episodes and really change status quos in a way where sometimes you just get locked out of the show if you haven't seen that. But it's not to the degree that you get with at the Sopranos level, right? It hasn't gotten there. It's one more step up there because you are absolutely true. This is a horrible show to try to establish any kind of baseline of canon. Like, why is there like an old-timey 1950s guy running a bar in this town? How big is Sunnydale?
Right.
Does anyone know?
Hey, listen, I am in London. There are plenty of those guys. That made perfect sense to me.
The how big is Sunnydale is always the question, because like they really stress that it's a small town in seasons 1 and 2. But then, like, how many crypts and cemeteries and, like, big castles that no one's ever seen before does this town have?
There's, like, a whole, like, seaport shipping area at the end of this season. And it's like, is Sunnydale landlocked or not? I was under the impression that it was.
and I have some people that have maybe kind of betrayed the Vatican who have tombs there. Who knows?
Also, when did he get excommunicated from the Vatican in 1950?
And they shipped you a long ass way. That's how excommunicated you were. They sent you to America and then they sent you to the West Coast.
Oh God, the place where you want to be the least of all.
The show kind of acknowledges how ridiculous that is, though. You know, Buffy's like, oh, like, it must have done something. That there's like a joke in there, you know, that like this is a ludicrous. This is a ludicrous plot point that we are, even as the characters who are written fictionally into the show, going to mock.
Yeah. And that, I mean, like, right, it's like a credit to the show that we can like joke about all this like ridiculous shit, but then be like, yeah, but I still fucking love it, right?
Absolutely.
Like, no, 10 out of 10, no notes.
And I think that's like, because sometimes people will like, I'll get people on like Twitter or something that are mad, and it's like, no, I'm critiquing it, but I love it. Like, it's not, if I like am like joking on it, it's a credit to the show that we can like joke about stupid shit, but then still be like, yeah, and I fucking love it. Like,
yeah, kind of off that. I'm skipping forward a little in the episode, but when she climbs through the window, LOL, even though her mom's not home, and she's sitting on the bed, and Angel's like, "Oh, what's wrong? I can tell something's wrong." Oh my god! First, they look so young. Second, she's looking in the mirror, and she sees that he's not there, and she says, "I want a normal life." And then he's like, in his head, of course, like, oh, so that means she doesn't want to date a vampire. And she's like, oh, no, it's not you. And for whatever reason, that made me think of how much better, like, the Buffy romances are than, like, any of the Twilight romances. Like, how much better written this is. Because, like, Bella's, like, the total opposite. She's like, I want to be a vampire just like you. And just, like, how fucking ridiculous is that?
Her only two motivations throughout the entire series. I read those entire books because they were more interesting than high school at the time. So I was like, it's a fun train wreck. Okay, math class is not interesting to me. Her only motivations the entire time are to have sex and become immortal, which I do respect, but it's not realistic.
No.
Oh my god. Yeah. The moment where, I mean, we're skipping ahead a little bit, but in episode 2, where the second half of this, where she says, you're going to attack me and sends assassins after me, but nobody messes with my boyfriend. That is the sexiest line, I think.
Oh my god. Yeah. I was watching this with my partner. I was watching this with my partner, and he turned to me and was like, is that how it is?
Hell yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Love you, babe.
It's just more complex, like they just have like a really complex relationship, and they're not trying to like figure any big thing out, I don't know.
Yeah. I have a friend who just texted me and was like, hey, I think you would love hearing this. Me and one of his best friends is like obsessed with Buffy. And he was like, and we just started like after work, I think over Zoom, they've been watching like an episode a day after work together. And he was like, Angel and Buffy have really good chemistry. And I was like, yes, the one critique I have is that I don't know that David Boreanaz is that good of an actor at the start, but they do have good chemistry from the start, I think, right?
He doesn't really have to be.
Yeah.
Like he's not the one having the complex feelings.
Yes.
Yeah, a lot of the things that make Angel to me really show up in Angel the series. Like his inability to dance or sing, and his like weird stilted awkwardness. Those things aren't established, but we're seeing him through Buffy's eyes, so is how I think of it, where his like real awkwardness and lack of socialization, it comes off as him being stoic to her, but we see it with more clarity as he becomes a better actor, essentially.
Well, also like being 300 years old and like dating someone who is 16 years old.
Yeah.
Also that.
Yep.
Oh my god. It's why I love it so much in the final season when Angel reappears and you kind of get to see him through someone else's eyes, and how kind of incredibly like badass he seems, having us seen him being this kind of a bit of an awkward dork.
Yeah.
Oh my god, goodness. It reminds me, I don't know if you guys read this essay. It kind of went a bit wild a couple of years ago, where everybody's beautiful but nobody's horny.
Oh yes, I love that essay.
It's so good about how basically like nobody wants to fuck. Like all of these like kind of big superhero things, and actually like Marvel stuff, like or various properties. I mean, again, in blockbusters, everybody's a little bit chased now. So actually, weirdly, there's a nostalgia in going back to this and just like fully being like, Buffy is horny for Angel, Xander and Cordelia, for all of that is problematic AF, want to have sex with one another. Like Drusilla and AJ, there's some S&M stuff without a safe word, but you know what I mean? Like, it is so refreshing, even though this is such young people, to actually have an acknowledgement of like, oh, sexual desire is a massive part of this dynamic.
Yeah, and it's messy. There's like it's fun to engage in unhealthy and messy dynamics, but also in, later episodes we get to see some of the aftermath of doing these things without negotiating with your partner. It's like it is a PG version of adult sexuality, which is like a really interesting line to thread here, especially as the Xander Cordelia thing comes to a head later, which does it make sense? It does make sense.
I made out with someone I hated before.
Yeah.
Like, I did that.
Absolutely. That was a whole period of my life. We don't need to talk about that.
I think it makes sense in the way that, like, women, particularly of this era, were conditioned to understand the way that men would act if they were attracted to them. And, like, that
absolutely.
sort of thing is a element of affection. I think a lot of us have to spend a lot of time unlearning that shit because it's terrible.
Yeah. I remember.
Is it true? Yeah.
I remember watching this as a teenager and talking about it with other teenagers and saying, like, Xander, like, is kind of a mean, awful guy. And people would be like, oh, he's just like a realistic teenager. And just, sure, that is true. But also, he's like a mean, awful guy.
I do with Xander. It's weird because, like, one of you said this earlier season, Xander, I can more be like, okay, I can, like, he's supposed to be like 15 or 16. All right. Like, he does shitty things, but then, like, as it stays like that, as he gets older, it's like, no. And, like, for me, and I've said this so many times, but, like, for me, just watching it, because, right, like, watching it live, I don't know that Xander was someone we would have considered a bad guy back then. Like, just because, like, knowing what we know now, and be like, no, we were dumb. That's a bad guy. But, like, back then I just saw him as, like, he wasn't my favorite, but it was like, whatever. Mm-hmm. But even back then, I remember when he left Anya at the altar, I was like, well, now I hate him. Like, I hate him forever. And, like, I could not get past that, especially with, I don't even know what the writing is trying to tell us with Xander and Anya at any point, because it's like, he gets so jealous, and it's like, you left her at the altar, dude. She could fuck every guy in town, and you would have no, like, there'd be no room for you to say anything. She could do whatever the fuck she wants. Like, she's not cheating on you. She fucks Spike, so what? Like,
she's traumatized.
Yeah, like, that shit makes me furious, because, like, he doesn't own her, and he feels like he does.
Yeah, it's like, by that time, the show is outright telling us that Xander is the heart of this dynamic, and he's the one that sees everything and understands people. So what does that mean? It doesn't, this is like another thing where it means, like, it like is a step on the way to what peak television will become, with shows like The Sopranos and its cohort, where that never coheres for me. Like, they never really figure out what to do with Xander, and they try super hard. And this is like the beginning of them trying to give Xander his own arc. It's just Cordelia's way more interesting than him. And funnier and hotter.
They're both the ones, like, without superpowers, right? So it makes sense, like, in even in these two episodes where, like, everyone kind of is pairing off in a way, right? Mm-hmm. So, like, when Xander's checking the career results in that scene after the mirror scene that I had just mentioned, I think Cordelia's checking it, and then Xander comes up, right? Like, we just keep seeing certain people kind of paired off together, and it makes sense that they're going to get paired off together, because we don't know that Willow has those magical powers yet, but we do know that she's, like, super smart. So even if she's not magical, right? Yeah, and Buffy's like the Slayer, right? So we get Willow and Oz kind of paired off together. We have Kendra and Buffy. We have Cordelia and Xander, and, like, those are the pairs that, like, everything kind of keeps going back to.
And I do think the screwball comedy vibe is, like, a good instinct for those two actors and those two characters. And
that makes sense.
They kind of repeat that with Anya too, where she's not quite, here it's like Cary Grant, Katharine Hepburn. But with Anya, she's like a different kind of thing. She's way more blunt. She's become sort of a sort of an airhead type by default. But with here, it's like a battle of the wills, and that's what makes it so fun to watch. It feels, maybe it's even more like Spencer Tracy. You feel like you're watching Adam's Rib a little bit.
Oh, I don't know. I feel like Anya, I absolutely adore Anya. I really haven't forgiven them for killing him off. Spoilers for Chosen.
Yeah.
Yeah, for me, she's more naive. So I felt like that is somebody that's really bullying what he's doing to her. And in the case of Cordelia and these back and forth, I just feel like there is such a disconnect between how much he is buying into, and his insults are just kind of based in like patriarchal, hideous bullshit. And she's basically calling him annoying. And yeah, I hated. I genuinely, and I feel that like there was genuinely something that I had to sincerely unlearn in myself to not internalize that this is fun teasing and actually like slightly sparky, sexy, pre-coitus conduct. Because it's really hideous. But
like
the
Zero
thing that
defensive Xander, lots of television, I guess, had men like him. So yeah, like I feel like we all, whether it was Xander or somebody else on someone from that 70s show, like same era, like much
Yeah.
show.
And look what turned out with those guys.
Yeah,
it was sort of a default character archetype, was a guy who just hated women. That was like his whole thing.
We didn't know that at the time. It was just that's the way people acted. I mean, I'm curious. This is the first time we meet Oz?
Yes. No.
He's been in the background, right, of other episodes, and sort of
this
like
is the first time he's like
they meet
talking in a way that like engages with the character. That it's not like he's just Jonathan going to get someone's going to grab him and like hold him hostage for a second, and maybe we'll recognize him in the future. Because I mean, Oz is like a nice guy.
He's just pleasant.
We know we can write nice guys, right?
I stand by that. Oz is my forever Buffy crush character.
Oh my god!
Because I don't love when he comes back after he leaves. Like I don't love that, but like one episode of him being kind of shitty because he's getting jealous, I can a little more forgive than like the entirety of all the rest of the men that aren't Giles. But like Oz, I feel like stays consistently like you said, Kim. He stays consistently like a good guy, right? He's just like chill and nice and really likes Willow.
Yeah.
I think this is peak Seth Green when he does like the different hair and he looks like he could be like the way they style him.
I was trying to figure this out of like why his hair changes from red to brown.
I know nobody else even changes outfits, but he's changed.
Right.
Yeah. I was like, damn, crazy day at school. Well, time to go dye my hair. I was looking at IMDb because I was trying to figure, where is he in his career? So he would have had red hair for Austin Powers International Man of Mystery, which would have premiered in 97, the same time as this episode premiered. But he must have also been about to be shooting Can't Hardly Wait, where he has brown hair at this time. So that's why he had to change his hair color. And they had to come up with an insert shot to explain that, which is now so obvious. Like, oh, yes, they clearly shot this at a different time.
It works,
though. But it is consistent to the character. He changes it a couple more times.
Yeah.
And it always looks good.
It's always good. And it's like, it's cool that he has, they are trying to show us that he is like a completely his own person, right?
Yeah.
And like having that opportunity here to show that he's not even consistent style-wise from day to day because he's so into the journey of self-discovery, it sets them up for success with this character in a really big way.
I think so. And like, I do think, like you said, Kim, like you would think this is the first time meeting him, but it's weird the way the show introduced him because he doesn't, like, he's been randomly in the season, but he doesn't interact with Buffy or Willow until this episode. Like when Buffy accidentally thinks he's one of the Order of Taraka and like grips him up and throws him against the wall. Like that's the first time they've met. And then when he like gets brought into that whatever plot devicey thingy where him and Willow, which also is a funny bit that like him and Willow are the smartest in school. We never address Oz that way ever again after these episodes.
Yeah, doesn't he intentionally flunk this year so he can stay behind?
Yes, he flunks.
I mean, he's like one of those like artistic types that has so much potential, right? And so those guys, they've been watching, right? Like those like weird tech bros.
Right.
So it's more like a potential thing, I think, than like a straight A thing.
Yeah. Isn't it then disappointing that he's become like a massive NFT bro?
I know, it's so sad. I had such a thing for him like around this time. I used to watch Can't Hardly Wait like a million times.
I still love that movie. I'm not going to lie.
It's so great. I think it's really good. Also,
right?
What's her name? Also looks absolutely incredible in that movie.
But like, I do like that. I do like that the job fair. I kind of like the discussion between like Buffy. I like that Buffy so much does not want to be a cop. Like, I appreciate that she's like, when Xander's like, oh, I saw you, like your job listing was law enforcement. And she says, as in police. And he says, as in polyester, donuts, and brutality. And I was like, oh, I see you, Buffy.
And then later they're walking, you know, she's kind of given her like sadnesses over like how she's just the Slayer and she's never going to have a career to Giles when they're like trying to figure out what was stolen from the mausoleum. And then Giles is like, well, have you ever considered law enforcement? And it's like, you know.
And she looks like she's going to kill him the way she just like points the flashlight. Like I like that. And I mean, the theme of these episodes really is that Buffy like does want a normal life. And that's kind of the theme of the early seasons, right? Even in season 7, when she gives her cookie dough speech, that's kind of what that's about, right? Like, she doesn't know who she'll be and she's still figuring it out because she can't have a normal life. I mean, like, we can all relate to that and we're not vampire slayers, but that's kind of like, I feel like plays into that. And I do like that this is a theme. And I would say by season 3, maybe even by the end of season 2 is when she fully accepts it, right? Like when she has that argument with her mother, I almost feel like that's kind of her being like, I'm speaking it because I'm accepting it. And like, this is who I am, Mom. And like, kind of like, you know, when you come out. So yeah, I like that we go back and forth with this. I like her and Giles. Her and Giles have really good back and forth in this. These
Esme
episodes.
At one point turned and watched the TV. Esme, my 2.7-year-old daughter, and was like, "Is that his daddy?" She doesn't have gender pronouns quite yet. So she was asking me if Giles was Buffy's daddy. I thought that was funny.
Kind of. But so yeah, we get that. God, Kim, where are we? Where would we be? Oh,
so
we're gonna go to
the Taraka people are arriving in Sunnydale, which is a bunch of like smaller little scenes that I don't think necessarily matter.
Right.
And they do. We're almost to we're at the part where they're ice skating.
Yes.
Oh dear God, the ice skating.
I kind of almost wish they had kept with like, oh, Buffy really likes ice skating, because I think I read that Sarah Michelle Gellar likes ice skating, and that's why they were like, oh, she can ice skate. Great, we'll put it in the plot.
Why does she trip though? She's a Slayer.
I know. I was thinking that too. It's like she just kind of sits down and then is like, owie, and it's like very strange.
I mean, I can ice skate.
Yeah, exactly. You know, I can go around a rink a couple times without falling. It's not that difficult.
I don't know that I can, but I do like, and like, you know, Angel in true tuxedo mask fashion, like pops in and does nothing. And Buffy ends up killing the guy with her ice skate, which it looks kind of stupid, but in theory, I like it. Like, I like it. Yeah.
But does she kill him? That's the thing that I was kind of puzzled by when I was watching it again, where I was just like, it actually, I may be incorrect. Maybe it was my Amazon Prime because this is the 14th way I've paid for Buffy seasons. I think it cuts. I think they kind of gather themselves together and then they just wander off.
I mean, so that's another thing they do. I think when Giles and Kendra are talking about it in part 2, they even say some of them are human. So it's like, wait a minute, she's killing some humans? Like, because they're like, oh, some of them are humans, some of them are not.
Yeah, I think it's that the issue is, I think, for a lot of people that are as well versed in Buffy as obviously all of us are, is that when you go back to these earlier seasons, her powers are so diminished that it becomes quite confusing to watch at times. And the fight scenes are so unlike that thing with the ice skating fight where you're just like, season 5 Buffy, she wouldn't have blinked, this would have been over.
Yeah. I do think I actually do like that. I like that it's like, because I see it as she gets better and more confident as like a fighter. Because, right, like in early seasons, like, I don't know, there could be like a guy that's just bad, but is a human guy, and he would somehow beat her up. But then, like, you know, in season 5, I think of one of my favorite, like, showing how strong she is when she walks by Joel Grey and just casually pushes him off the tower with like no effort and is just like, get out of my way, you're annoying.
So good.
And like, that's like a very good version of Buffy to me. And I feel like we get there by like 3, and then in through 4 and 5, it's like you said, she blinks and this shit is over. Like these dudes like that are not anything to her.
Yeah.
And I do like it as like a development, but also they get like the like high jumps and that goes away mostly later on.
100%, but there's still part of me that could not cope with the fact that, like, so we have Buffy and she basically has knives on her feet, and this is still how this goes.
That is fair.
Also, like, she maybe kills a dude and then they just like make out for a while.
Yeah, they're really kind of just chilling. It's really funny.
Guys, maybe I need to rewatch this. I swear to God, I don't think he dies.
She kicks him with
laughing in the corner. Yeah.
I mean, I didn't see any blood on the ice because I was waiting for like there to be blood on the ice.
But
like, she either knocks the dude out who's just laying there unconscious. They have not checked to see whether or not he is still alive, and they are making out.
Between this and the worm guy, I have so many questions.
The worm guy, God. I think I just took it as like she slit his throat. That's what I thought it was, like with the ice.
That's what it looked. It made like a slitty, throaty noise.
Yeah, but I mean, there is the problem of blood, because I even made note of this. When Oz gets shot later, it's like, is he shot? He's just like has his hand on his arm and he's like, I've been shot, but there's like no blood. And I'm sure that's like a censors thing or whatever, because they're still trying to make it kid friendly, I guess, at this point. But so yeah, she defeats that guy, and I do kind of like the fake out intro of Kendra, where you think she's part of the aura of Taraka, but she's not. I do like that, and I like that we like follow her watching. She sees Angel and Buffy make out. It's on the ice, right, where she sees them make out. Yeah.
And he's got a vampire face on, so
right. We get the very like cheesy, you shouldn't have to see me like this, and she's like, I don't mind, and then they kiss. I'm like, okay, sure. But yeah, I like the way Kendra is shown here, and I like that. Again, another thing with the powers unbalanced, because it's like, okay, she locks him in a cage, but like even Angel season 1 version, like on his spinoff, he would have easily been like, okay, and just like kicked the door, right? And it would have like opened.
Yeah. It's like a really small lock, you know?
Yeah,
like, I could break that lock. You know, I'm not very strong. I feel like with enough leverage, I could probably get that door open.
We're just going to have to suspend our disbelief, y'all.
Yeah. So Kendra does beat him up and like throws him in this cage, and they're in the back of Willie's, right? Isn't that where she throws him in? Yeah.
And this is after we get like the weird scene. Well, I think Giles like scares the crap out of Buffy when telling her like they know about the Order of Taraka now, and then she like climbs into his unmade bed. So this is like right before the end of the episode, and I just thought it was interesting that like that's like signifying like, okay, this is where she feels safe.
Yeah. And so when she lays in his bed, who does she wake up to as confronting her, Leila?
She wakes up to Kendra attacking her while she's asleep, which I wrote in my notes, bitch move. Regardless, that feels like very dishonorable as a way to attack anyone, even if they are the soulless undead.
I like this fight, and I love, like we said, I don't know, I'm into Kendra. I like the Kendra. Like, I don't know, I like it. I'm like, yes, this is how Kendra talks. I don't know.
I like Kendra. I love how everything sounds like a question when Kendra says it. But I'm just saying, like, in terms of if you have a Slayer handbook, attacking someone whilst they're asleep, respect yourself better. Respect your own fighting skills. Come on. Like, that's good. I'm pretty sure that's against like war laws. Like, she could be tried at The Hague for that.
Just doing a little light war crimes. It's fine in the fight against evil. You know, that's just obviously what it's all about. I think it's mostly, for me, it's Bianca Lawson is just so likable.
She is.
She just is playing this character that has very, very little development in the text. And like very little background, and very little to work with. She's imbuing as much likability into this character as possible, and it's hard for me not to like her. You know, this is the season where the show does briefly acknowledge that this is a town in Southern California that so far only seems to have white people in it. But it is, you know, here it's just sort of unlike the vampire that goes out of his way, and I love that character who's in early season 3. who's very, very a super slick guy. He's very fun.
Oh, Mr. Trick, yeah.
The Trick, I love him. Oh, man. He's great. But here, it's like this very self-conscious attempt to add a character that is as unlike Buffy as possible. And I would say they did a good job coming up with that character concept without really having a strong idea of what country this person is from specifically. And I think with a different actress, I think she just wouldn't have worked, you know?
Yeah, like she would be a character we could have hated if it was a different actor.
Yeah, it's really down to Bianca Lawson. Shout out to Bianca Lawson. You're doing great, honey.
Yeah. Come on this podcast. I've been trying to get you on for a while. Come on.
Sister-in-law of, stepsister of Beyonce. Yeah.
Yep.
Oh, wow.
And
so,
Nepo baby. Part of the
really?
Lawson family. No, her father's Richard Lawson and they're Motown. So she's part of a dynasty. I mean, like,
I didn't know that.
I'm not criticizing her. I think it's fabulous that that's where she is. And also she's got the secret to eternal youth because she's been playing a teenager for 30 years and pulling it off.
Yeah, wasn't she also a teenager in Pretty Little Liars?
And I think Teen Wolf as well.
Oh my God. Well, shout outs to you. Someday I hope to attain your magic powers.
Yes, yes. And I do think like the like be continued is a really good point when she's like,
yes,
you back off, I'll back off. Like, who are you? And she's like, who the hell are you? And she's like, I'm Kendra the Vampire Slayer. And Buffy's like, huh?
Yeah,
like,
yeah, perfect.
Sarah Michelle Gellar is so good at face acting, and I just love the like, what the fuck look on her face, where she's like, I don't know what to do with this. And it's like a good beat to end on, right? Where like you are like, oh shit, I want to watch what's next because that's a big reveal.
It's like a comic book splash page.
Yes, very much that. And then the next episode opens. I do like that pretty quickly, they both are like, okay, we're cool. Like, we don't need to fight. And I do appreciate that. Like, they don't keep fighting. It's like, when we go back to them for the next episode, they are discussing, you know? Like, yes. And I like that. I like that it's like, okay, yeah, these are two women who are like smart and trained. And so, yeah, of course, they would be like, okay, yeah, if we're both Slayers, let's relax and not fight.
But they still have the conflict of their, differing priorities throughout this episode.
Yeah, like who does the slaying correctly, quote unquote.
I think the thing that did bother me with Kendra, though, is that, like, and I do think Bianca Lawson did a fantastic job with performing him and really, like, forming you understood who Kendra was after just, like, a few lines of dialogue. But the styling, the makeup, the costuming, and the disconnection between the performance she was doing, to me, was just absolutely baffling. Like, when they're just, like, I own one shirt and it's this long sleeve silk crop top.
Right?
Yes.
Like, I am basically a monk, but look at my lip liner.
Yes, exactly.
What the hell happened in the conception of this character?
Her hair is like so moisturized too, at a time when that was not a style that I would say most stylists would know how to do on a TV set. It's really beautiful and immaculate, and those beautiful silky pants, which look so beautiful on her. Yeah. And she's telling us that she's not allowed to speak to men, and that she has no family or friends. And it's like, well, who did your hair?
What the friend is. I don't know what the word friend is, but look at this elaborate updo that I've come to fight vampires in.
I know.
I'm just going to tweak it a little bit by the end. We're going to add a few more braids. What the?
Oh my God.
It's like the costume makeup department didn't get the character description.
I know. It really is. It doesn't make any sense at all.
But so I do like that pretty quickly. It's like Buffy just kind of introduces her. And like, I just like that they've gone to Giles, they've gone to the library, and like, Kendra is shook when Willow enters and she learns that Willow knows Buffy's a Slayer, showing us the big differences between Kendra and Buffy, like pretty at the top. And I do like that. And I even like when she's like, she died, and like Buffy's like, just a little. Like I don't know. That's the kind of dialogue like I love from this show that we. Well,
and also Kendra, when they're at the bar talking to Willie, like trying to figure out that Angel's okay, and I don't remember what Buffy says, But maybe like, I think it's the part where we get the split in their priorities for the episode where like Kendra's like, okay, we have to get the big bad. And Buffy's like, okay, no, we have to save Angel. And Kendra's like, no wonder you died, you know, like, because her priorities are all messed up. I thought that was like that quick wit, you know, she's got it too.
Also, that fabulous line of Willie trying to persuade them to do strictly high-class nudes. And I was just like, yeah, being a hot teenage girl. Not that I know, but
I going to tell the story about when we were at Hooters now.
Right. So Kim and I have been best friends for 20. We realize it's going to be 26 years, right, Kim?
I don't do the math anymore.
I think it's going to be 26 years. I think this year it's 26. We all once went to Hooters it was someone's birthday, wasn't it, Kim?
And y'all just liked to piss me off.
Yeah. And the waitresses were like hitting on Kim and being like, you should work here. And they were like all over Kim, and it was insane that these women...
I'm 16. They were like, oh, you just have to bring your parents in for their permission. You'd get really good tips. I was like...
They like...
16?
That's disgusting.
It was wild how much... And it was like not the men, it was the waitresses, right, Kim?
Yeah, but I mean, I'm sure their managers were like, go, like, get this, like, we want her to work here.
Yeah, like, I feel like I even remember one of the waitresses, like, staring at your chest when she's, like, talking about the tips, and it's like, oh my God.
Wild. Being an attractive teenage girl is like, just a mind-altering experience.
Guys, like, Buffy enjoyment aside, we grew up in the, like, most cursed era.
Absolutely.
So we get like Giles is all flummoxed, blah blah blah. They get to talk about Angel, and then they are gonna go save him, but before they can, Willie saves him, but we learn he's getting paid by Spike, right?
Mm-hmm.
To give Angel to Spike because plot devicey things. I forget how they learn. Kim, do you remember how do they learn that they need Angel for it? I don't even have that in my notes.
They get the thing from the mausoleum, and he can the Dalton can finally translate the thing that he needs to translate.
But this is what I'm talking about in terms of canon. This is bullshit. Vampires don't get sick for long. Like, and the thing is, like, rewatching this. Okay, over the fact that like Drusilla was apparently like tortured in like, was it Prague? And is struggling to recover until her sire has a dagger through her hand. Like, what the fuck is that? That never comes up again. And then, like, Spike and then it reminded me, why is Spike paralyzed for a time? You're telling me these vampires can live forever and they don't, like, bounce back from, like, some injuries in the way that in season 7, like, Buffy basically gets kind of every bone in her body broken, and she's just like next day, like, and again, like, what the hell is this? Like, there is such a sort of like we are throwing everything at the fan to establish some canon in this episode. And don't get me wrong, again, like we said earlier, I love this show.
Well, I think it goes back to what we were talking about earlier, where like he who shall not be named like loves to take credit for all of this, but like that writing is nonsense, right? Like that story writing is nonsense, but it's made better by the dialogue and the actors who are like
we didn't need as many steps, but it was nice that we got to spend time with these characters along the way.
Because like James Marsters and Juliet Landau are both like very good actors who are enjoyable on screen.
Very good.
And I think the sort of torture sequence with Juliet Landau and Boreanaz, and like here you get to see him. Yeah, he's not a very good actor, but you see him pushing himself here, and it's like with the benefit of being in a scene with a stronger actor, really. That what Juliet Landau does with Drusilla, I mean, when I watched this as a teenager, I was like, this is the most finest acting I've ever seen in my life. But you know, as an adult, I'm still really impressed. It could be so obnoxious, you know?
Yes.
It could be straight up cloying and terrible to watch. But she always takes it to a place you don't expect in her line delivery, you know? And especially the very casual, say uncle, oh right, of course, you killed my uncle, which I've always thought is a really funny line, delivered very well.
You know, it's funny you say that about her acting, because I was thinking, Ian and I had the chance to interview her for Slayerfest, and I was thinking, you know, like, she's still Drusilla, like, and, you know, Ian's interviewed James Marsters, and, like, he's still Spike. Like, I don't see them as their actors, you know? You know what I mean? Sometimes you just can't take away, like, who the person is in real life because they're, like, famous or famous to you.
Yeah.
And like,
yeah.
they're just so good that they're just Giselle and Spike, you know?
Well, and I do think that both of them speak so lovingly about the characters.
You can tell they put a lot of themselves into developing these two characters. So you can like tell that their specific particular interests are in there. And you can tell based on just like how they are outside of set, how they are in interviews and the kind of people that they are.
Yeah. Yeah. And like, I find that like really interesting. Buffy specifically, where I've interviewed so many people, like when Charisma Carpenter came on, she said, oh yeah, me and Cordelia, that's like a blurred line. Like I basically am Cordelia Chase. And like, you know, as like a fan, it's like, that's cool. But like in real life, you're like, oh, they're not like their characters. You have to remember that. But then like hearing her say that, because she was like, I grew up playing Cordelia. She like shaped who I became as an adult. And that does make sense, right? Like you would pick up cues from like this. If you portrayed like a strong character that was someone that like was confident, knew her shit, like Cordelia very much, she understands the like, it feels like she like you said earlier, she doesn't need to be in this group. Like this is like, she's doing it because she likes to. She doesn't need to be part of this group. She's a popular girl, whatever. And I don't know, that's cool to think of like, oh, I played a character and I admired the character and that helped shape me because I was so young. And I do think maybe a lot of the Buffy actors, not all of them, but some of them like feel that way from like interviewing them. And like, it's cool to think like, not cool, but you know what I mean? Like, it's very nice to see that they can still love their characters even with such a crappy and like a shitty environment on set, that they can still be like, no, I love my character and I'm proud of it. Like that is cool.
A lot of the themes that this episode picks up upon is like agency. So like there is an element of like, oh, Buffy hasn't picked this gig, she's just been assigned to it. And then I believe by the end of the series, we do have a sense of like Buffy is like fully choosing this destiny for herself. This is like an empowered choice in this way. But I really do see the seeds of this happening for Cordelia in the same way, where perhaps like Xander feels that like there is a pressure to make friends, to kind of impress girls, or Willow even to a certain degree of like, you know, like to find her place in the world. This is the choice that she's making. But what this episode does, which I think is the most interesting element, is this idea of agency, and heroism comes from agency. Like if you are always fated to save the world, or even if you're like Angel and it's just like you're going to do this to save your soul, that's kind of one thing. But if you're a Cordelia and that's not beholden unto you, that's not what you were assigned, and the way that Buffy becomes at the end of the day, where there are other people that can replace her, but she still fucking shows up, that's true heroism for me. And I do, what I love about this episode is that we see the seeds of that.
Yeah, you're right. I do love that.
And this is right when they're kind of, after they've figured out and they decide they're going to go save Angel, this is when we get to kind of that next stage, and Buffy's wondering about her future. Well, she's like, oh, well, maybe Kendra can take over for me too. So that makes sense. Can I change the subject completely?
Yes.
It was way too easy for Xander to break into Buffy's house.
Yes. Also, what's going on in this Southern California town where the murder rate is so high?
Like,
the thing I do have is, how long were they in that house? Because like we cut back to them a few times,
like and
it does feel like the next day, right?
Yes,
I think it is.
I know we've already discussed the hate kiss,
right?
But can we talk about the music?
Oh, sure. Yeah.
Like, what was with that choice?
I don't think I noticed it. What was it?
It's like this triumphant string swelling music, right?
And they did it both times they kissed in the episode. So, I mean, y'all study TV or like write about TV more than I do. So I was curious what you thought about this choice. It felt like very weird to me.
I mean, I'm not sure if they were choosing music from the library at this, or if this is a point in time where music is written for television shows. So I'm assuming that they had a series of choices. I feel like the vibe they're going for, like so often, like they'll draw upon the sort of classic 1940s, 50s Hollywood stuff of just, you know, studio tropes. So it feels like to me like the swelling strings, you know, when the couple finally kisses at the end of the movie, but juxtaposed, you know, in a situation where they've just been insulting each other and to create a humorous effect. But I mean, the music, generally speaking, in Buffy is either like too obvious or just feels wildly inappropriate.
Yeah, this felt very much like the music choice to me felt like, I'm going to reference that 70s show again, like the laugh track in that 70s show where it's like telling you how you're supposed to feel. And I wasn't sure if it was telling me that I was supposed to feel like, oh, hooray, finally, or if it was like making fun of that way that you might feel if it is that. You know what I mean?
assume it's trying to make fun of that feeling.
Okay.
I feel like, though, I mean, with a lot of like the stuff that that Xander does that's weird and sexist, they like try to have their cake and eat it too. Play off everything as a joke, even when he's being incredibly mean to the characters that are around him. And here, it's like I think another way of softening the sort of hard edge to Xander, which is that he is really resentful of all of the women in his life.
Yeah, certainly. And I think just to speak more to Cordy's the character development with her and everything we were saying before about like how this is not necessarily something she has to do or like a social group she has to be a part of. I lost my train of thought, but her license plate, I did make a note of that it says Queen C. Yeah, I really liked that touch.
Your car is so cute, honestly. I'd want to be trying to get a ride in that, even if we weren't like doing life or death save the world affairs.
Right? I was like, I should have had, why can't my license plate say something like that? Like I have a vanity plate because everyone in Alabama has a vanity plate.
Fair enough.
Yeah, and I was like, mine should have said Queen K.
Absolutely. It's not too late.
Yeah.
Yeah, you know, I'm also a huge Cordelia fan, and I do think seeing them both, you know, Cordelia has already been choosing to show up to this stuff just because for a while, and I hadn't even thought about thinking really directly about this is Buffy's chance to choose to continue to live the life that she has instead of choosing a different life, although she still really feels strongly that she wants to have a normal life. But Cordelia is so interesting here because, and eventually things will change for her. Her big struggle, it becomes whether or not she will want to give up the comfort of her social circle and her social life that puts her first in every single way in order to do the right thing or sort of be friends with people that she actually has common interests with. And that being represented by Xander, who also will betray her in a very definite way very, very soon.
You're right. It is that is coming up, isn't it?
It's like, I feel like, yeah, there's like a sweet spot here with the character interactions that are fun. And then they flip really, really soon after this, right? Like pretty soon, Angel will go evil. Pretty soon, Xander will make a whole bunch of bad choices. Pretty soon. And like right at the end of this episode, it becomes Drusilla who's the stronger one and Angel who's the weaker one. And, you know, I think other than that last change, which I think is very fun when Spike is just like getting clowned on like 24/7 by everyone around him.
The rest of the season.
Oh God, I do love that. It's just like everyone's making fun of him. It's great. Like that is a fun dynamic switch, but I think some of these other dynamic switches didn't need to happen as quickly as they did. You know, I think that Xander could have actually become more likable if they didn't have him just immediately give in to his lesser impulses in this relationship.
Do you think that's a problem of when the show was made, or do you think that that's no excuse?
I mean, I think it is a problem of when the show is made. I think, though, it does reveal a little bit about the overall writing philosophy of the show. You know, stuff that would come from the top down, where Joss Whedon has said repeatedly that he doesn't like keeping happy couples together because he doesn't think it's conducive for drama. And I feel like good writers before then and after him have demonstrated that is just not true. That it's perfectly, you can have characters learn, grow, and change within romantic relationships, and that doesn't need to be only a vector for potential drama. And I just think I think it's a little lazy writing, but I think it's lazy writing that I do know is endemic to television at this time because, again, you're writing to get into syndication, right? So you want there to be a single status quo that you can return to eventually. And what's the status quo for Xander? He's single.
And immediately after making out with Cordelia in the basement, when they get back to the library, hits on Kendra.
Yep. hate it.
He really fucking does.
And then
Leila,
says,
though,
and then he defends Angel to Kendra, but makes sure to add in, except I don't like him.
Yeah.
Fuck.
Xander is, there's one thing that's consistent about him. He's always petty. Like he stays petty from season 1 to season 7.
The thing I will never forget is that fantasy. This is the moment when I was like, I think this character might be like deeply deranged in a way I don't know if I can handle. It was when he talks about how he has this fantasy of being rich later in life and meeting Buffy and then taking her out to dinner, and she complains about how Angel doesn't appreciate her and is, you know, no longer attractive, and, you know, she's stuck at home taking care of the house, and then he says with glee, and then she cries, and I was like, wow, I want to behead you.
Like the behead.
It's just he doesn't need that head. Doesn't need to be attached to his body.
Nah. So then Kim, where are we?
I mean, can I make a suggestion as to where we are?
Yeah, sure.
I really want to get into what's up with this worm guy. What are his powers?
What are his powers?
He enters a house with an unsuspecting woman. Moments later, she screams. She's dead. She pursues some of our heroes in myriad ways. I would like to make heads or tails of this.
How were they in danger?
They do see it in the book. There's a man, and they see that his in the illustration is his brain
he
is
just freaks him out so much because he's worms that they just expire on the spot.
The Order of Taraka is so powerful, you guys.
He's just like, no, I'm not willing to live in a world like this.
Yes, I can't be worms. Goodbye.
I mean, I understand, but like, yeah, it is weird because it's like, there's not a moment when it feels like it's like, okay, what are you gonna do? Throw worms at me? Like, that's gross. I hate it, but like, I'll make it. You know,
what happens is that Cordelia Chase is really upset, which I get because I would also have been. But what does he do?
Oh no, you'd be upset. Would you die?
No, I wouldn't be so upset I'd die. The other guy has a knife, and then the last person
than the woman in this show.
Yeah. Okay, so let's go over the powers of the Order of Taraka. There's guy with a weird eye, presumably has knives. Bug man, lady with guns. She's ordered to study the ancient order of guns.
She has 2 small daggers also.
Right, yeah.
Are they supposed to keep coming too? Like, isn't there just like do they keep coming?
It was like after 3 guys, they're just like, you know what? Seems like too much work. I don't want to keep doing this. We'll just take a nap. We'll do it later.
God, do I run the Order of Taraka? We gave it a good go, and let's all like sit down and have some snacks. Like, it is like, that's why this writing feels like when I was a young teen, I used to write and draw comic books. They were always like big ripoffs of like X-Men or Avengers. And like, it would be like, this thing has all the power. It can kill people. And that would be the plot. And I feel like lots of times in season 1 and 2 with like the demon-y stuff, they try to like keep it consistent, but sometimes it really is just like, this thing will bring death, and we don't really like ever get an explanation. Like,
yeah, you had a guy that was just worms.
Like, just worms. Yeah, he's worms. That's weird, right? Yeah. Make him worms. I don't know.
Like, they escape from him using like a closed door and duct tape.
Yeah, like, just close the door and you'll be good. Like, then he can't get you.
Come up with a pretty foolproof method of murder, like, very quickly. Also, it's like, you just gotta squish the guy. Man, imagine if they got like bug spray. It would have been over for him.
I mean, all you have to do to kill a vampire is like run them through with a piece of wood, and they like turn into dust.
That's true.
Yeah,
that's true.
Also,
Yeah,
holy
true.
water.
That's more hardcore than glue.
All right, true.
That is. Yeah, I do like that when Cordy's talking to him, but she thinks he's a makeup salesman. What is her line? She has a really good. I'm both a winter and a summer.
Yeah.
And you know what she is? I was looking at her. She is.
You're like, she's not lying. She is.
Yeah, no, she is so beautiful, and like, actually, she genuinely is she is a winter and a summer.
It's like unreal how beautiful she is in that little tennis outfit with the sweater. I was
100%.
freaking out over it. Oh my God. She looks so cute.
Ian told me to make notes, and like one of my notes is like, she is a winter and a summer.
Okay, wait. Educate me. I'm a bad gay. What does that actually mean? A winter and a summer?
Colors that look good on you.
Yeah.
She can do cool tones and warm tones also.
Oh, then yeah, you're right. She is. She is.
Yeah. So it means basically you can look very nice in like an icy blue, or you could look very nice in like a bright orange.
You know, and she does throughout the season wear both of those colors to great aplomb.
Yeah. Yeah, she does. You're right. Yeah, you're right. So whatever. They escape the house. Who knows how long they've been there. What's funny is, so like they all go back to the library. They all like converge at the library, right?
Mm-hmm.
After going to visit Willie, which you kind of already talked about, which also when they're visiting Willie, Kendra says she senses something dirty in Willie.
Mm-hmm.
And we never we don't go back to that.
Yeah.
Like, she has vibes about people though. Like that's not the only vibe she has. There's somebody else that she's like, oh, that's like, they're not good, I think.
I mean, we never go back to the vibe on Willie. Like, what does that mean that she senses? Does it mean he's a demon?
He betrays them. Like, we're about to get to the part where he like delivers them right to the lair. Delivers Buffy.
So she just senses that he's shifty?
Is the vibe that he's like evil in a supernatural way, or just a
that's what I mean.
guy?
Yeah.
Oh no, I thought that he just was shifty.
That makes more sense, I guess.
It's not.
It's also weird that these are the first episodes we see Willie, because I always think of him as a constant in the earlier seasons, but like, because like Willie's is a place they mention even when they don't say him. Like they're like, oh, go check out Willie's.
The whole like place though, once you physically are there, really does feel like a bar someone had to make up in a hurry. You know,
yes,
it's like I was at the bar, you know, the old weird old timey dive bar, and it's got a big jar of eggs. You know? Like it feels very much like a bunch of writers are on a deadline and they need to come up with what a bar would look like in this universe.
I was convinced.
Yeah. But then we all go back to the library, but Spike brings Drusilla Angel. He's about to do the ceremony.
Kendra and Buffy have that really important conversation about emotions. They're kind of secluding themselves. Kendra kills the bad lamp. And then yes. And then, you know, Kendra says that emotions are weakness, and Buffy says that they give her power. And I had a question for you all about this scene, if you don't mind. Okay. Buffy goes on about how she like definitely would have won that fight that they had, basically just to get Kendra riled up to prove to her that she can use her emotions, which Kendra then in turn uses towards the end of the episode. They both teach each other something. But I wondered, like, do y'all think Buffy really believed what she was saying? Or do you think she was only using that to like teach?
So I did a little bit of the math on this. So judging by the way, assuming that like kind of the seasons kind of, you know, add up with the school year. So Buffy died in June of 1997, and then Kendra appeared in November 1997. So she has been a Slayer for 5 months. And I reckon the advantage of literally just the ability with the crossbow, Buffy's got this covered.
I can see
and like
that.
as much as like Kendra's like, oh, I have been like a weird orphan for like 20 years of like pre-Slayerdom. I don't know what happened there. Clearly they had not established the law before they introduced the actual potentials. But like, you know, Godspeed to them. But yes, 5 months of Slayerdom versus Buffy, I don't like her odds.
And you think Buffy like knows that? She's like, yeah, no, I would have totally won.
Oh, 100%. I think she's teasing her. And I think that's the reason. I'm not a morning person, so maybe I'm biased, but it's the reason that Buffy, like half awake, still beats the shit out of her.
Yeah, I mean, I think the thing that they're trying to position here is something that the show wants to prove right, that Buffy's ability to have attachments to other people makes her well-adjusted and also makes it easier to share the burden of her life amongst other people, makes it easier to live her life. And this is going to be the thing that up until the season 7 finale, the show will continuously reinforce in the text. And I think Buffy being able to kick her ass blearily first thing in the morning is another confirmation that the stodgy old Watcher way is wrong, and it's actually better to let teenage girls just be teenage girls.
But though I would also add, Gita, that one of the things was that I love that when there was an idea that she would join law enforcement, there was that seed of anti-authoritarian
yes
that I think plays out so well.
Yeah, I do think, once they figure out that they have written a world with lore, around season 5, season 6, they do start to position Slayers as being exclusively living on the underground. They think about the one American Slayer that I've always wished they did a series of, the 1970s blaxploitation Slayer, whose name I forget.
100%.
Oh
Nikki
God,
Wood.
I love her. I love the brief appearance we see with her. Unfortunately, right before she dies.
Looks in that fight.
I know.
That's the hottest he's ever looked.
I completely agree. Oh my God, yes, with the safety pin earring. Oh my God,
a very important sexual awakening for closeted Ian, and he said, "You have good taste."
Yeah, it's
funny, Ian, because I thought I was a lesbian at that time, and that brought me back in.
God, yeah, you see
maybe
there.
She's bi.
Oh God, yeah, you see from there, Slayers are no longer this sort of special worshipped class. As Kendra is, but sort of people who live on the outskirts of society by default, because it's the only way they can live this life. I completely forgot what the rest of the thing I was saying, but I think it's neat to see something that the entire rest of the show will try to hammer home as the point of the show up here in such humble beginnings.
Well, we were talking about how anti-authoritarian it became.
Oh, yes. It's cute also that shows up here. She's against being a cop because they have to wear polyester. But also, there is an acknowledgement from Xander, of all people, that police brutality is a very real thing. And she, just generally speaking, she seems to think that cops are lame and being a cop would be boring.
Yeah. And I kind of love that. And I do think the anti-authoritarian thing is a through line with Buffy, right? Because in season 3, she tells the Watcher Council to fuck off. And in season 5, she calls them back and is like, I need your help, but you're going to do exactly what the fuck I want you to do because you need me more than I need you. And it's a great moment for her. But Buffy very much is she had this bullshit with Principal Snyder, right?
Mm-hmm.
And she wasn't really pressed with Principal Snyder. She didn't like him, but it wasn't her thing with Principal Snyder was more oh, he's annoying and I don't like him.
Well, he's also a dick.
Yeah, she wasn't, but she wasn't afraid of him. It's not like she was ooh, I have to respect him, or ooh, I'm afraid of him. She was just oh, he sucks.
She's trying to tolerate a bad situation for long enough until it no longer becomes something she has to deal with, essentially.
Yeah, and so I do think this all tracks with her. I'm trying to think of, so I guess, we already kind of talked about Oz getting shot. I do like that Kendra is the one that saves them in this scene. She's the one that, I do like her entrance too. It's very of the time where they're trying to make it a surprise, but the shot is shot so tight where clearly she's just standing there and the cop would have seen her. But I like that it's a surprise and her leg kicks from off screen and that's how she beats up the cop.
Yeah.
But so then they go to the library and I don't really have many notes about this. I know Xander meets her and he hits on her.
They have the lamp and emotions conversation.
Right.
Kendra reveals she's not allowed to talk to boys, and that's why she's acting totally weird about Xander.
Bananas.
Yeah. And then we somehow, I don't know how we get, I have no idea. I guess why does Buffy go to Willie again and get transport? He delivers her with he and the assassins deliver her to the lair.
I don't know whether it's relevant, but I would just say one of the things that really bothers me going back to this is that I hate it when they treat Buffy like a fuck up. I hate it. I hate
She's
it. The
trying
idea that
so
she's
hard.
doing so well. And they treat her like she is just some high school dropout, can't even keep a job, part-time job at the kind of local convenience store. I mean, why are they treating the hero of humanity like she's like some useless fuck up? And there is a line in this that really, really bothers me, where Giles is talking to Kendra, and he says, oh, there is a Slayer's handbook, but, as soon as I met you, I knew that it wouldn't be good for you. And I was just like, Giles, I remembered this bullshit moment where you drugged this woman and put her in the house with a mad vampire. And I felt I had forgiven you for this shit, but maybe stuff is coming back.
In this episode, they all would have wound up in the same place anyway, but I totally get what you're saying.
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah, so Willie delivers them to Spike.
Yeah, but
right?
I remember Kendra won't go with her because it goes against the rule book. So this comes back to she fought, they're emphasizing the differences
the
between
rule book
them.
that Buffy is not allowed to see, despite being the fucking savior of the planet.
Because it wouldn't work for her anyway. But yeah, and then they all wind up there anyway, even though I guess Buffy's getting delivered to the assassins deliver her to Spike, and then Kendra bursts in to save the day.
In the world of Giles, that didn't impress me much.
Mm-hmm. And then the Scoobies also burst in to save the day. So now it's the big fight scene at the end.
Yeah, and I do like this fight scene. I kind of like a thing that they do on Buffy, which I've only really realized discussing it for the podcast. They do give people they do give each Slayer a different fighting style. I noticed it when Buffy and Faith have their big fights. They do fight differently. Mm-hmm. And I like that Kendra fights differently. When she comes in and does that flip and she's yelling, Buffy wouldn't do that, but it's okay, yeah, that makes sense. She's going into battle. She's gonna just yell and kick and punch. And I don't know, I appreciate that her fighting is still a little different than Buffy's, even though it's still very Vampire Slayer.
There's I was thinking a lot during watching this, about a lot of different things about Buffy fight scenes. The one my mom would always insist that she could totally tell when the actor was the stunt double. Actually, I mean, it's basically every time Buffy's not facing the camera, right?
Yeah.
So that's not super impressive. But here I was just thinking about the way that they've edited everything so quickly, so that in a super low resolution television, I'm sure that it was a lot less noticeable, little things like that. But also, they don't treat the scene as a big spectacle scene. They treat it as a bunch of little moving parts that add to the character development here. Buffy and Kendra don't really become friends until they do that flip thing and switch. And they start, and that stuff that's really cute. It feels comic booky. It does. You really feel, see how writing a comic book or reading a lot of comic books has influences teams writing style, where a lesser show would have the fight resolve really quickly and then have a lot of these other things resolve in dialogue. They have the characters do things.
Yeah. And you're right. That is the moment they become friends. That's funny. I didn't think about that, but you're right.
Yeah.
I have to say, I do get mocked because I'm sort of a person that just pursues a story to get the best kind of anecdote. But I do have a fabulous Faith Eliza's Dishy story if you want to hear it.
Yes,
please.
I would love it.
So I was in Thailand. My brother's, my dad's best friend has just died, and he left us in the middle of the jungle in Thailand. And we were just kind of very weird. My dad had just kind of gone off into the wilderness to go to a funeral in, I believe, Armenia. And all of a sudden, out of the wilderness appears the former basketball player Rick Fox. I'm English, so we didn't answer this person. And Faith from Buffy, Eliza Dushku.
Yeah, they were dating.
They were dating at the time. So this was about 2012. And I, as much as you understand, I could not be more obsessed with
right. Did you recognize her right away?
Oh my God, 100%. No, the entire tactic comes because how are we going to become friends with this wonderful human being who has got skin that literally we cannot even describe in words? This is how obsessed we are with her. And so we end up on New Year's Eve And like I'm with all of these teenage to 8-year-old children because I'm the eldest of a large group of family. And my parents have left to go to this funeral. I am in the Thai jungle. So I end up with Eliza Dushku and Rick Fox sending those lanterns, where you kind of have the big Thai lanterns where you put a candle in them and you send them off into the ether. But then as they keep going, there's sort of a lot of flames where they're trying to get them going. And I keep trying to tell her about how much I love Buffy, but she can't hear.
Oh my God.
So my sister just ends up running into the bathroom when she goes to the toilet with her. It's just like, my sister loves you. And sadly, it doesn't really work out because she's mostly confused why a 10-year-old Sudanese child is running and yelling.
Somewhere Eliza Dushku is telling the story from the other side.
Again, we are in the north of Thailand, in the middle of the jungle. There are 18 people in a fucking
Leila, what is your life? I feel like you have all these beautiful settings you've been in. I'm like, God, I barely leave the suburbs.
Well, no, my life is very much so that I have a lot of my father and my brother work in the airline industry, so I fly for free. And then actually it turns out when you fly for free, it's very much cheaper to be abroad a lot of the time.
That makes sense.
Stay in London for 2 weeks or have a fortnight in Malaysia where you will spend £3.20 for a day's rent. But yes. No, it's a very ridiculous life that I live. My kids are very young, so I think we've got 1 or 2 more years of having kind of this this existence, but not for much longer. But anyway, sorry, that is a big distraction from
I love that story. That's so wild to run into her there.
Yeah, no, it was her and Rick Fox, and they were so kind of glamorous. So I think she's now married like a tennis player businessman. Is that right?
I think so. Something, yeah.
I mean, she was definitely sober then because she was talking to me all about the sober cocktails that were available at the time. And I was just like, on your faith. But we had the most fabulous, I had the most fabulous New Year's Eve where it was me and Rick Fox and Eliza Dushku.
What?
And a lot of lanterns in the jungle in Thailand. And
so wild.
Amazing. You're talking about fighting styles and Faith's fighting style, obviously, and Kendra and Buffy's fighting style. So yeah, I think
it's a lot slower, isn't it? When you watch these old episodes, it's so slow.
Yeah. So I do have I feel like there's someone on Twitter, and I apologize to this person. I can't remember who it is, but there's someone who anytime I post anything from this episode, they're like, I don't get the 2 Slayers, no waiting. Can you explain it to me? And it's always I'm trying to fumble, and I've Googled this and I can't, but it is that was a saying, wasn't it? 2 blank, no waiting, or
2
blah,
lines,
blah, blah,
no waiting.
Right?
Yeah, 2 lines, no waiting. That was
what's it from?
That's like a TV writing
2
term.
Slayers, no waiting. So I just assume that is just something that she's saying that the Spike basic. I think that's just a quippy thing for Spike. I didn't think that was based on. Maybe it's because I'm not American. I just assumed that was just a quippy thing.
Yeah,
just for Spike.
This was it's a Hollywoody screenwriting term where you have 2 different storylines that parallel each other.
Okay,
because I didn't assume that was a slogan or anything.
Yeah,
but it is it's kind of a thing, right? It's just for me, I'm just oh, that's a thing they say. I don't know, and I had trouble explaining why. And I was I don't know, it's just
a boomer joke.
But yeah, I like seeing them fight Spike together. I like seeing. I do like that Cordy and Xander get the revenge on the worm guy, who again, what was he even going to do? But they get the revenge.
What his powers? Tell me. When he goes, he comes in pretending to be the door-to-door salesman, and then she screams. What is she screaming at?
I mean, he turned into worms. Maybe he didn't die. Maybe he just turned into worms.
Yeah.
But then you'd be more like, ew.
I don't know. If a person turned into worms, I might scream. I really like in this fight scene when Spike says that he'd rather be fighting Buffy too. Like, and that's kind of a mutual feeling. I felt like that was like very early foreshadowing that they didn't even probably know was foreshadowing yet.
Right. Like it works as foreshadowing retroactively, but I'm sure it wasn't written to be foreshadowing. Yeah. They save Angel. I forget, the ritual is officially completed, right? When they pull the knife out.
No, because Angel would have died.
Right. Oh, right. Okay.
He's like, oh, sorry, Pat. Like, we got to get you out of here. And then, so he just.
But it's like very close to it, right? Like it was,
Vampires get sick sometimes.
Right. Right. And I do like that, like, Spike grabs Drusilla and Buffy. What the fuck is that thing called from church? Incense. Okay. I didn't know if it had
when Drusilla grabs Spike, it's so sexy.
Yes. And like, it's so funny when you like, I mean, I'm forgiving of this because there's nothing they could do, but like the budget of like it hits him and then that like piano set just like completely like he like falls into it and then the whole thing just collapses on him. Kind of like it. It's like cheesy, but I like it. Fire breaks out, they leave. And then then how it happens, Kim, we kind of wrap up, right?
Yeah, we're back at high school and we've got our little pairs kind of pairing off. We have Oz and Willow flirting. We have Cordelia and Xander screaming at each other in a sewing classroom and then making out again. We have Kendra and Buffy. Kendra's leaving first class on the airplane or something this time, not in the underbelly of it, with her amazing new hair. And they've both learned something from each other. And importantly, Kendra kind of emphasizes to Buffy that slaying isn't a job and how she learned that from Buffy. So like the fact that like Buffy owns her identity as a Slayer and it's not like necessarily her job is something that Buffy then can maybe realize about herself.
Yeah.
But she's also not the only freak. I liked that, that Kendra's like, you're not alone. She doesn't have to feel alone anymore. She knows somebody else out there is sharing this with her.
It's shit like that. I'm like, man, it would have really been nice to see. I like, even if we just got more of her before becoming, like, she had to pop back in a few more times or, it really, I think, because it's nice seeing Buffy have that too, right? It's nice seeing Buffy being like, oh yeah, I don't feel so alone because there is you and we are, there's supposed to be one of us, but there are two of us. Like I do like that. And, I mean, the same thing with I wish her and Faith had been wrapped up a little more or like had been able to stay, like have more episodes together, like after Faith came back from being evil. I just like the dynamic of Buffy and another Slayer. I do think it's a good idea and it works well for her to like have a like some kind of like tension, but also like companionship.
Yeah. I feel like the point that they're making again about her being a better Slayer when she has allies is even better made when one of those allies is a Slayer like her.
Yes. Agreed. All right. Well, I guess we are at the end.
Of course, we can't not mention how Drusilla comes back rises up from the ashes in that great, awesome cinematography in that last scene. Where,
it's fantastic.
How they were not killed by fire, which we all knew, but important for people watching the show for the first time.
And it's good imagery. Yes. That's a thing that I wish they had done a little bit more with because like Drusilla's kind of just Drusilla, right? Like she doesn't really become this like super strong, like it's kind of Angelus, right? Like in a few episodes we get Angelus and then he's the like set up to be the big bad. And we kind of like the kicker at the end here, you think, oh, Drusilla's going to be a big deal now, but she really isn't, right? Like,
yeah, but we've got the whole role reversal at the least.
Yeah.
She has fun just taking care of her pet boyfriend, And
that's true.
That's always fun.
But okay, now we are at the end. Favorite outfit, Gita?
God, favorite outfit, honestly, just because there's so few beautiful Black women on the show, I just think Kendra's outfit is so cute. And I spent the entire time thinking that she looks so adorable. And it's close second to the little tennis outfit with the sweater that Cordelia has with the ponytail. But if that's Kendra's only shirt, she has chosen incredibly wisely. Her titties are just like sitting perfectly. They really look amazing. And for the whole, I get it's like a high fashion version of someone who's, tribal or an islander. So I understand the style perspective from there. But just as an outfit, this is something that I want to wear daily.
Leila, what's your favorite outfit?
I'm actually going to go with my favorite outfit is, and again, Kendra, a lot of mixed textures in the jewelry. Didn't enjoy that. Although I would say Bianca Lawson is one of the most beautiful humans who's ever lived. So I would say actually the thing I really enjoyed was Buffy being a little bit more androgynous. I really enjoyed that kind of gray vest, the crucifix, the baggy trousers, the kind of flannel shirt as maybe an overshirt. And, it really reminded me of, some fabulous moments that she's had where she's embraced this androgyny that she's had. And particularly with Angel in this episode being a real damsel in distress, to see her in that sort of kind of, the gray vest, the crucifix, a little bit of a heavy eyeliner. Maybe when she gets cold, she's throwing up a flannel shirt. But I would also really shout out Seth Green in terms of the man who can pull off literally any hair color.
Really?
Yeah, he really can. Yeah. Kim, what's your favorite outfit?
So Willow in part 1 of this is wearing this beautiful black sort of longish like coat thing with flowers embroidered on it. And she's got like a purple shirt and a light blue like skirt thing and light blue pants. And that outfit totally reminded me of you trying to make my sim. And you were like, it looks like you'd wear this shirt and it looks like you wear this pants. But when I put them together, it doesn't work. And I was like, just make them not match. And you were like, oh, okay, yeah. And I was like, this would totally be my Sims outfit if Ian was making me, now that he knows how to make it happen.
I think my favorite is, I'm going to go with Gita. I love Kendra's, I think the purple and pink just is very iconic.
Yeah. I mean, it just looks good on her, and maybe I'm mistaking her for a good outfit, but it looks so good on her that I want those silk purple pants so bad.
Yeah. There's some people it's like, oh, you can wear that color, but maybe I can't. So I get what you're saying, but yeah, she wears it well. But I will say a close second is in part 1, when Giles and Buffy go to the cemetery during the day, she is wearing black boots, a black mini skirt, a beige top with black stripes, and a black choker, and she looks fantastic.
She really does. Choker.
Oh my god!
Right? I love the choker. I think it brings the whole outfit together for me. And I remember when I was doing season 7, I had the costume designer on for every episode to give a wrap up. And he is very nice, but he only worked season 7, but he said he loved dressing Sarah Michelle Gellar because she looked good in everything. And I kind of think that's true, right? She pulls off most of the, I don't think there's a look where it's ew, she looks bad.
Yeah, there's a season 2 episode where she shows up in a raincoat and she looks amazing,
Right. Yeah.
Oh my god, it sucks to be an incredibly beautiful woman.
The peril, as Jonathan says in Earshot, the perils of being beautiful and blonde.
The perils of being so incredibly typically beautiful.
All right, favorite scene, Leila?
Favorite scene, I'm gonna go with the moment where Kendra and Buffy confront each other, where they talk about whether or not being a Slayer is going to be a choice, and Kendra tries to convince her that it's part of who she is rather than something that is kind of thrust upon her. And for me, that kind of cut to what is the brilliance of series 5 through 7, where we actually look to what makes Buffy a hero is that she chooses heroism. She chooses this fight. She sacrifices. And I think it's a little nugget for what is actually fundamentally heroism. It's not just being given powers. It's actually about choosing something more significant.
Yeah.
Gita?
So I think my favorite scene, for a completely different reason, I love the scene where Buffy confronts the cinematography in the scene where she's walking down the hallway and thinks anyone could be the assassin. And of course, also, you find out later, correctly identifies one of the assassins. It's the cop with the gun. But then when she almost chokes out Oz, it's just some of the funniest line delivery Seth Green has in his entire performance as Oz, you know, where he shrugs it off at the end and he goes, an intense person. He's completely rationalized it. I just think everything that has to do before he's sort of entered into the circle of the supernatural, everything Oz does where he gets to briefly intersect with it is like, that's weird anyway, is it's just incredible comedy acting, and I look forward to watching it always in my rewatches.
Yeah, I do appreciate it. Kim?
I'm gonna just be very Kim here and say that I liked every scene that had Drusilla in it as my favorite scene.
Fair enough. Very Kim, yes. I think I have my two like ties are that I really like the Kendra Buffy fight at the end of part 1, and I like how it ends. But I also really like them fighting together at the end of part 2. Mm-hmm. Like for me, those two scenes work so well together. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I think those. What grade do we give the episode, Professor Kimberly Ann? What grade do you give these two episodes together?
I'm going A-. We got the we don't get the straight A because, you know, there are some things that maybe we had to suspend our disbelief in a show where we are already suspending our disbelief.
But all right, that's fair. Gita?
You know, I was thinking A-2. Part of me wants to bump it down to a B+. But I think the things that I would bump it down to a B+ for just can't be helped in terms of this period of television, like the Leila repeatedly pointed out. Like there's just a lot of stuff that doesn't make any sense in this episode and will never come up again. But there's enough good character acting, a lot of really funny line deliveries, and they do build on the stuff that happens in these two episodes for the entire rest of the show. So I feel like it's worth the A-.
Yeah, you are right. They really do. Leila, what grade do you give this?
I would give this, in terms of a Buffy episode, a C+, in terms of a regular television episode, an A+. Because I think that like Buffy is just on a different level. I will till the day I die. Like I think I hold up to any episode of Sopranos, any episode of Barry, whatever you want to bring up to me against this. Like, it's not the best Buffy episode, but in terms of TV, A+.
Yeah. You know, I was talking to someone about this. I've had Emily Nussbaum on a few times, and she always says that Buffy is a thing that made her want to get into television criticism, because she would go to like these parties with like writers and stuff, and everyone would be like, oh, I'm watching The Sopranos, oh, blah, blah, blah. And when she would bring up Buffy, people would be super snobby about it and be like, oh, that's a show for teens. And she'd be like, yeah, and it's really good. Like, just because it's not on HBO doesn't mean it's not really good.
I'm so uninterested when it comes to kind of like whatever is the canon. I'm now the TV critic for The Guardian. And like, I don't know that there has been a better show than Buffy in the past 20 years. And I would never, and I'm not saying it ironically, I'm not saying it with like a pitch of humor. Like, this is what I sincerely believe in terms of performance, in terms of dialogue, in terms of like, you know, creative arcs. Like, there is no element of me that is kind of like with a pinch of salt saying that Buffy is great. This is a fantastic show. This is why it has endured in terms of we are all still talking about it. You have your podcast about it. We all want to still digest about it. Like, you know, there's a reason certain things endure, and it's because they're fucking amazing.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It's funny. I was talking to someone about this recently that like on social media, because even though like, you know, Slayerfest, I've branched out with the podcast. We cover all the Marvel stuff, but no matter what, the Buffy stuff is what does best on social media. Like 100%. The Marvel stuff, like the only Marvel stuff that will do well is like WandaVision, because I feel like kind of everyone loved that.
WandaVision was so good.
Yeah. It like makes sense. And I do feel like that makes sense for also Buffy fans to like. But yeah, it's like the Buffy stuff, even when I'm like not in between covering Buffy stuff, I usually use Buffy content because that's what does well on social. I give this episode a B+. I do think it's very fun. And Gita, what you said about they do build upon this for the rest of the series. And that's what I really appreciate about it. But there is still stuff that they never address again. But yeah, thank you all for joining me. Thank you all for listening. If you like Slayerfest 98, you can find us on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and anywhere else you get your podcasts. If you'd like to support us, we are on Patreon, where we do live watches over Zoom with just the Patreon subscribers. We do Zoom calls. I have bonus episodes, and any support is much appreciated. If you want to find us on social, we are at SlayerFestX98. If you want to follow me, I am at IanXCarlos. Gita, where can everyone find you and your writing?
I am at XOXO Gossip Gita pretty much everywhere. On Twitter, I have a Substack that I have been not very good at updating. I have a Tumblr, which is a more fun space to be on than Twitter at this point. And I'm just out and around vibing, just doing stuff. So watch out.
And Leila, where can everyone find you? And you're right.
God, I'm such a freelancer. I feel like it's going to be a very embarrassing list. But yeah, so I'm IndieWire in terms of festival coverage. You can find me there. I have a podcast where I review the week's latest reviews for Little White Lies, which is truthandmovies.com. And then I review film and TV. I'm the film critic for The Guardian. And then I review stuff for Little White Lies, Sight and Sound, IndieWire, the AV Club, and Primetimer TV.
And Kim, where can everyone find you?
I'm on Twitter at Kim and Joe South.
All right, well, we will see you all next time. Bye.